Alright, it's been a couple of days since I last worked on this, and what I've learned is that apparently there is a screw or screws or bolts underneath the power head that screw down through the adapter plate into the exhaust housing here. So in order to get the exhaust housing off, you need to take the gear case off, which we've already done, and you need to remove the power head. And then with the power head removed, you'll be able to remove the screws that will allow the whole adapter plate apparently to be taken out from the top with the cooling tubes attached to it. So there's going to be no way around this, that I'm going to have to, if I want to repair those cooling tubes by soldering onto them, I'm going to have to get them out. And to get them out, I'm going to have to take the power head out. So it doesn't look like there's that much left to really do to take the power head out now that I look at it. I mean, my wiring is pretty much non-existent. Looks like there's a bolt here that is obscured by this housing, and I can't see anything holding this housing on other than where it screws on in the front here to the carbs. So I'm thinking maybe if I just take these 6 screws out here, maybe this whole thing will come out and expose that. And then there's another one over here on this side. And then this whole bracket that this is that this igniter module is mounted on is actually separate from the rest of the power head. So I think that could just stay behind. That bolt right there actually attaches this housing to the adapter plate on this side and that side. So that actually, I think, can be left alone. This ground wire here is going to have to be disconnected. So I think it's just these 2 in the front here, and the 6 bolts that I already took out here, and the power head could be lifted out with maybe just some wiring and a couple of tubes here and there. Yeah, you know what, maybe I don't need to take this all the way off. I should be able to get on that bolt now with a socket and a U-joint. Okay, so I had to unscrew these 2 long bolts here on the bottom of the fuel pump and move the fuel pump away from this bracket right here. And that let me almost get this off, except for it was hitting the, there was this piece right here in the front. This is what the front cover lock latches down onto, so I had to take that out, and that gives me just enough room to move it out of the way like so. And then we've got this little line right here, which apparently looks like that goes over here into the bottom of the crankcase. I actually can leave that on for right now. You can see all the mouse debris and stuff that I wasn't able to get at before when I was cleaning. Nasty. Gotta hate mice. Alright, it's a 3/8 bolt, which isn't very big, so if it's rusted it's going to want to snap. So I'm going to try it, and if it's the least bit tight I'm going to put some heat to it. So there's another one that was badly corroded, and it was certainly tight enough that I probably would have snapped it if I hadn't applied heat and tapped it. But once I applied heat and tapped it, it's pretty easy to get out, because we've got 2 dissimilar metals. We've got steel threaded into the aluminum housing. They have different, those 2 metals have different expansion coefficients, so if you heat the surrounding aluminum, it will heat up and expand, and the thermal shock and the jarring will break that corrosion free in many cases, if you're fortunate enough to be able to get to, if it's a blind hole it's a little tougher, but in this case it worked. Alright, so now I've got I just disconnected this wire. I've got to disconnect the cutout wire here, starter cutout wire. So that I just had routed through this here. I'm going to have to disconnect cable, let's see, this cable here that goes to the bottom of the solenoid, which means probably to make it easier on myself I should just take out these two bolts and take this whole bracket out if I can do that. And I've got to disconnect this linkage right here. That should be easy enough. It's the throttle linkage. There's a spring. Goes over. Take this. Looks like if I take this screw out, this whole part will come. Let's try that. So I'm taking these two bolts out right here. Take this whole bracket out. But before I do that, I decided I'm going to take these two screws out so I can leave the ignition coil with the power head. That way I don't have to deal with undoing it from the distributor. Alright, move that out of the way. I put the bolts back in the holes so I don't lose them. Same thing with the screws for the ignition coil. Put them back in. Move this out of the way. And I'm glad I did, because I happened to be looking down and I looked at that void right there. Decided I had to take a look at it from this angle, and sure enough, little son of a gun snuck a bolt in right there. See it? So that bolt, you can't get a socket on it. You have to use an open end. Well, no, you have to use a closed end wrench on it. It's a stud. It's a nut on a stud. A well rusted nut on a stud. So in lieu of the discovery of that nut on a stud, I now realize I think what I want to do is I want to take out these two bolts in the back that I wasn't going to take out before. And that should let me lift this whole outer pan up a little bit more and give me a little more clearance. Alright, well that didn't give me much clearance at all. It might be just enough. I noticed these rubber things here. Actually, here's one of those screws I left in. Should probably take that out before it falls out. Anyways, what I was saying was these rubber mounts underneath here, they just are kind of loose. So I should probably take those out before they fall out on the ground and get lost. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray that nut and stud with some PB Glastron and let it soak. Now, a quick note to myself on how that goes in, how that rubber bumper or cushion goes in. So the way that goes back together is a flat washer goes down there, the little washer goes down there, this rubber part goes with this part facing up underneath there. So this is down underneath this part right here. That goes down underneath there. And then on the top you've got basically the opposite. You've got a bolt, large washer, small washer, rubber thing, and then you get these metal sleeves. Well, I got a 1/2 inch closed end wrench in there and got it started, and I was unscrewing it, and then I had to screw it back on because the wrench was stuck in there because there's no clearance. So now I can just do it by my fingers, I think. But what I want to know is how you're supposed to get that screwed back onto that stud later. That's going to be a trick. Still doesn't want to budge. Power head should be separating from the adapter plate right there. There's a big boss sticking out right here. I'm thinking I'm going to try and pry on that lightly with a pry bar. Well, prying didn't seem to do anything, but I don't want to pry too hard because I'm worried about snapping something right off. So, but when I move it, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's actually separating where I want it to. So now I'm thinking maybe it's just a matter of needing force pulling straight up on it, because I'm not sure how far the end of the crankshaft sticks down into there. So what I want to do is I want to get something over here so I can put some hook onto this and pull straight up and see if I can't get that to come out. Alright, here's the plan. We've got the Oliver over here, and we've got the hook, and we're going to put a chain on there and try and give it a jerk with the loader. Hope this works without breaking anything. Sweet! I just put some tension on it, and then I banged on the bottom here with my foot, and it popped free. So now I just got to finish taking my cables off and everything. I can pull the whole power head right off. Okay, I just took off the main feed wire to the solenoid, and I can leave, actually I can leave this in here. I've got to disconnect this main ground cable from the motor right here. This bracket I can let just come up with that, so I don't have to disconnect this lead going to the starter. I'll probably just hang the bracket up here like that, so it's not hanging from the wiring. Not that there's much wiring on here. I've only got this ground wire and my makeshift cutoff cable here, which actually, now that I think of it, I'm going to hook that back up now because I don't need to disconnect that. I'm going to disconnect this one little line right here that goes to this housing so I can leave the housing behind. Looks like on this side all I've got to disconnect is the fuel line. I now believe that we are ready to lift this puppy up. Ground wire in the back, I forgot. Alright, get the wire off now. So now it should come right on up. There we go. This pan out of the way. You're looking here. I think under all this crud somewhere is where the screws are that are giving me fits. Either that or these bolts are so long they go right through into this exhaust part right down here. Well, it looks like there's a seal or something here. Oh, you know what? I think this is the O-ring that I ordered by mistake before, and ironically looks like I'm gonna need it. Yeah, this is the O-ring it goes